4 News starts right now.
Leaks, cracks, and accusations of a cover-up.
This video and more like it expose potentially dangerous problems with the new 520 bridge.
And at the center of the controversy, the same company in this video that shows 520 contractors drinking on the job.
Our continuing investigation into the 520 bridge project has uncovered evidence of widespread cracks and leaks in the pontoons destined for the new 520 bridge.
Evidence the Washington Department of Transportation kept under wraps as we kept digging to get it. KOMO 4 problem solver Tracy Vetter has the video the state didn't want you to see.
Around the world, Western Washington is the acknowledged leader in building floating bridges, from Hood Canal to Interstate 90 to the 520 bridge. And yet the problem solvers have uncovered construction flaws in every single one of the first 6 pontoons built in Aberdeen by Kiewit Construction for the new bridge. In pontoon after pontoon after pontoon, we uncovered evidence of leaks in dozens of the interior compartments called cells.
How deep is it?
The problem solvers obtained thousands of pages of public records and hours of video inspections inside the first 6 pontoons built in Aberdeen and floated to Lake Washington. What we found is far different from what the Washington Department of Transportation, WashDOT, told us just last month when we asked about this leak in Pontoon V and about the water weeping through this wall in Pontoon W.
Is that the only leak that you've identified?
That is the only leak that we've identified.
In fact, according to video shot in August and just released to the problem solvers, all 6 of the pontoons have experienced leaks, as many as 36 cells leaking water either from Lake Washington or from water intentionally placed inside to keep the pontoons floating evenly. But WashDOT told us...
Is that the only leak that you've identified?
That is the only leak that we've identified.
And then how many walls have you identified?
There's a couple.
Couple? Mm-hmm. Okay. So just a couple of cells?
The walls are external walls.
2 separate WashDOT insiders who asked to remain anonymous tell us they've never seen this many leaks and what they called extensive cracking in brand new pontoons.
It's already been exposed to seawater and the rebar is rusting.
The problem solvers uncovered documentation that all 6 of the first pontoons developed extensive cracks while concrete hardened or cured. This drawing, called crack mapping, is of the top and bottom slabs of one of the pontoons. Engineering reports found that the cracking appears to be similar in all 6 pontoons out of Aberdeen. John Riley, the head of WashDOT's expert review panel.
Is there any way to know if the cracking, the extensive cracking that we saw in the basin in Aberdeen is part of why we're seeing the weeping in the lake now?
Could be. Could be. It's the most logical connection.
A consultant's report in July raised concerns about whether the repairs could remain watertight. And by late August, internal WashDOT emails verified that many of the crack repairs are brittle and have already failed.
If they're already leaking, that's troublesome.
State Representative Mike Armstrong is the ranking member for the House Transportation Committee. He's disturbed by what we uncovered and that WashDOT hasn't been more open.
So we have to make sure that we have it fixed now before we start building these other, probably 30 pontoons.
Both our insiders say the problems with these first pontoons already undermines the structural integrity of the new $4.6 billion bridge. They point to the I-90 bridge where one problem pontoon being rehabbed by contractors sank during a severe storm in 1990, pulling down several other bridge sections. Since then, annual inspections monitor cracks and leaks. In the most recent I-90 inspection, only 7 out of 2008 pontoon cells had measurable water inside, and those spans are 20 and 30 years old. The first 6 brand new pontoons for the 520 already have at least 36 cells that have leaked. WSDOT would not confirm how many pontoons have leaked, only saying,
whether they are or aren't, we haven't accepted the pontoons, and we won't accept the pontoons until we know they meet the contract specifications.
Then there's the money. Insiders tell the problem solvers that late pontoons are costing taxpayers millions. The whole financial deal with two independent contracts but one primary contractor seems to favor that contractor, Kiewit, at the expense of taxpayers.
2 half racks of beer in there.
You might remember Kiewit from our problem solver investigation last spring, where we caught their employees drinking on the job. Here's how the pontoon costs got so screwy. Every day Kiewit in Aberdeen is late with pontoons, they owe the state 10 grand. But that also makes the pontoons late getting to Lake Washington. And on that contract, the state has to pay Kiewit 100 grand a day. So every late day, parent company Kiewit makes an extra 90 grand, even though the problem started with Kiewit's other contract in Aberdeen. Transportation Secretary Paula Hammond says the need to get the bridge built by their 2014 deadline dictated the terms of the contracts.
We took a risk, and we took a very aggressive schedule in order to make sure that we can replace this bridge.
WSDOT says it can't give us an estimate, but the records they gave the problem solvers show 74 days worth of delays and at least $2 million in repairs. That adds up to nearly $9 million to taxpayers.
I'd like to know who came up with that plan, because that doesn't seem like a plan that's going to benefit the citizens of the state of Washington.
Secretary Hammond also just announced she's reorganizing oversight of the pontoon construction office with a new director at the Aberdeen plant, as well as moving engineering staff to headquarters in Olympia. Our sources tell me they believe that's an attempt to control information leaks to the problem solvers. Tracy Vetter, KOMO 4 News.
I thank you for bringing everything to our attention.
This is what Governor Gregoire is talking about.
How deep is it?
The problem solvers obtained thousands of pages of public records and hours of video inspections inside the first 6 pontoons built in Aberdeen and floated to Lake Washington. What we found is far different from what the Washington Department of Transportation, WSDOT, told us just last month when we asked about this leak in Pontoon V.
Is that the only leak that you've identified?
That is the only leak that we've identified.
But new internal WSDOT documents obtained just today by the problem solvers diagram that leaking pontoon. It shows all of the internal compartments that are green, 12 of them total, are actually leaking. Other new documents and photos diagram the extensive networks of cracks as the massive concrete pontoons dried and hardened. We also found that all 6 of those pontoons have leaks.
I have made it clear, based on what I saw in your report, that I want another independent expert panel to review them.
The state of these pontoons is also causing internal strife in WSDOT. In a detailed report, one engineer wrote he believes corners were cut in an attempt to save money, time, and meet intense schedule pressures. He asked to stay off the Aberdeen site, criticizing the contractor's repairs to the pontoons and writing they are taking a huge gamble with a critical public asset. Governor Gregoire told me today that she wants the expert panel to decide whether or not the pontoons are safe.
So I thank you for bringing everything to our attention. We are absolutely going to guarantee the public, 1, transparency, 2, safety, and 3, protect the taxpayer's dollar.
Tracy Vetter, KOMO 4 Problem Solvers.
To me, it's a disaster. It's a disaster waiting to happen.
This man was an on-site quality inspector at Kiewit Construction's pontoon casting basin in Aberdeen last winter. He was there during construction of the first 6 massive concrete pontoons designed to hold up the new 520 bridge.
I won't drive across that bridge when they have it built.
Why?
Why would you drive across something that you know might fail? You know, it is a danger factor.
The inspector, who asked for anonymity, was part of a quality assurance subcontractor team hired by contractor Kiewit to ensure correct pontoon construction. The QA, as it's called, is required by the State Department of Transportation's contract with Kiewit. He's been an inspector for 10 years.
It's the worst I've been on for inferior work.
Our inspector confirmed what two expert insiders had previously told the problem solvers, that construction of the first pontoons was so shoddy it undermines the structural integrity and safety of the new 520 bridge. Our inspector says every day he saw iron workers misplacing or using the wrong-sized rebar. That's the structural steel that provides the strength and framework for the pontoons.
Rebar not having the correct clearances, rebar being out of place, bars being missing. It's not correct and it should not be signed off.
He says contractor Kiewit routinely poured massive walls of concrete to form the pontoons when conditions were either too wet.
They pour in such heavy rains and standing water that the cement is literally being washed out of the concrete.
Or when conditions were too cold and the rebar was frozen.
It shocks the concrete. And there'll be a circumference around the rebar with weakened inferior concrete.
A WashDOT internal document called a risk register even says concrete cracking in pontoons is an issue caused by Kiewit not following the plan for curing or hardening concrete, particularly during cold weather, and that it could potentially cost as much as $3 million. Inspectors are supposed to write up such work in what's called non-compliance reports, or NCRs, but
a few times I went to write non-compliances and I was actually reprimanded by my boss.
The inspector says he was one of several inspectors ultimately laid off, not fired, and told it was at Kiewit's demand because he wouldn't sign off on inferior work.
I'm not going to put my name on something that might get somebody killed or hurt. That's just not going to happen.
We asked Kiewit and WashDOT about the inspector's allegations. WashDOT never answered us. Instead, by chance, we found a posting on WashDOT's webpage calling the inspector's allegations vague and referencing Kiewit's quality management plan. Kiewit spokesman Tom Jansen said only, "While we take all claims very seriously, we cannot respond to vague, nonspecific, and unsubstantiated allegations." However, many of the issues raised by the inspector are substantiated in a scathing internal audit produced by WashDOT's own engineers, which the problem solvers obtained through a public records request. That audit found a pattern of non-compliance and failure to implement corrective action on the part of Kiewit, and that WashDOT failed to hold the contractor accountable.
Kiewit is so big and powerful. WashDOT can't stand up to him. Kiewit actually pushes WashDOT around.
The audit focused specifically on problems with concrete poured during cold weather and how concrete cured or hardened. Both affect how much the concrete will crack. And according to these crack maps of the first pontoons, all 6 experienced significant cracking. Though WashDOT has undertaken several rounds of repairs of these pontoons, WashDOT confirmed last week that the 4 largest are still leaking. They plan to begin another round of repairs early next year. In its online posting, WashDOT says Como needs to understand there is a rigorous quality program. But the audit cited that exact program, noting with report after report after report, 42 total, where Kiewit and WashDOT failed to follow plans to produce good concrete and failed to solve the recurring problems.
It's criminal in my book. Somebody up there needs to do a little jail time because they're stealing money from the taxpayers.
Well, you know, Governor Gregoire had directed the State Department of Transportation, WashDOT, to finish the new 520 floating bridge by 2014 because the existing structure, the existing bridge, could collapse in the event of a major earthquake or even a severe windstorm. Now, for the first time, WashDOT is saying it will not meet that schedule. WashDOT and contractor Kiewit are still trying to figure out a final fix for the first pontoons built for the Lake Washington Bridge. Divers have identified more than a dozen cracks underneath at least one of the pontoons, and they hope to begin repairs after the first of the year. But that, on top of pontoon construction problems last summer in Aberdeen, have slowed the project down.
Some of the issues that I'll talk about that we experienced this summer are making it a real challenge to complete the work by late 2014.
During a bridge construction update for the State Transportation Commission, WashDOT for the first time acknowledged that the bridge won't be finished by the governor's 2014 deadline. The governor set that deadline because, as depicted by these WashDOT animations, the current bridge is in such poor shape, the state says it could collapse in the event of either a massive earthquake or even just a severe windstorm. Now the state says it will be delayed by up to half a year.
And we're looking at negotiating a schedule that looks at summer of 2015, and that's what we're still in negotiations with our contractor on right now.
A problem solver investigation revealed that all 6 of the first pontoons built in Aberdeen had leaks and were still leaking on Lake Washington. Internal WashDOT sources and a former quality inspector all raised questions about the ultimate integrity of the pontoons and ultimately the bridge itself.
To me, it's just a disaster. It's a disaster waiting to happen.
WashDOT says it is also still in negotiations with contractor Kiewit over who will ultimately pay for the cost of those pontoon repairs. Reporting live in Olympia, Tracy Vetter, KOMO 4 News.